Welcome. Well, today we're going to take some lessons from the parable of Jesus found in Luke 15, and this is the parable of the Prodigal Son. Now, if I just set the scene for you, this is a story that Jesus tells, and he's already kind of set us up by saying some very powerful parables, these kind of earthly stories with heavenly meaning, about lost sheep and a lost coin. And now we're given this story about a lost son. And in this story, we find a father has two sons. Now, ordinarily, the sons would receive an inheritance of their father's property when he died. However, in some rare occasions, a child might request their share of the inheritance early. However, if they did, well, they didn't get any more later. It's a bit like getting all your retirement money early in one go, or having your Christmas money in June. You can't get any more when Christmas arrives. Also, as it's not kind of the done thing, this action by the son can also bring about like a negative community response, an outcome for the father and for the family and even for the son himself. And so in this parable, the actions of the younger son to request his inheritance early is really in effect severing the relationship and the love of his father. I wonder how his father felt in granting this son's request, and in doing so, letting him go. For those of us who are parents on this Father's Day, I wonder how easy it is to watch our children make their own decisions, and in doing so, at times, let them go. I can't really imagine what it must have been like for the father in this parable to watch his child walk away from him. So let's then consider the response of the father to these difficult circumstances in this situation. And we'll do this by exploring the heart of the father in three ways: persevering, praying, and positive. So firstly, the persevering father. The first strength and characteristic we see in this story is that the father is persevering in the way that he acts. He doesn't give up hope. The imagery of the parable is one where the father is watching and waiting, and as soon as he sees his son return, he rushes out to greet him. This heart of perseverance in the father is admirable, and it inspires us as fathers and mothers today to persevere with our children. I guess there are many moments, situations, encounters that will cause us maybe to drop our head or to give up our heart or just have to roll with the punches with our children. And therefore, this parable provides us with a great opportunity to be encouraged and affirm one another to have a heart of perseverance, even if it's against all the odds. And so in this parable, the father would have wrestled with thoughts that his younger son would be lost forever. But his perseverance in faith was one day given its reward as the lost son came home. I wonder, what God stories can we recall about seeing the fruit of our godly perseverance with our children and seeing that realised? Secondly, and attached to this really, is about praying fathers. Whilst this passage doesn't mention prayer, I would suggest that one act of perseverance that would have been practiced through the father would have been praying continually for his son and for his return. It's an amazing privilege as parents for us to pray for our children, and my prayer personally is that I will be a God-honouring father to my children. However, there are times when we have to let our children go, and in these times we are drawn to our knees in prayer, persistent prayer. Even if the circumstances seem impossible, I would encourage you to pray, and keep on praying. In the parable, the father thought that the son maybe was lost, but his prayer was one of his son being found and restored. For us today, our prayer life as fathers and mothers should not necessarily be focused on, I want to do more or be better. Instead, I encourage you today just to know how powerful the role is and the privilege that it is to pray as fathers and mothers for our children. Persevering is an active and positive way through prayer, and it's very empowering and mobilizing. This is in contrast maybe to a more defensive posture of simply sitting in the window feeling lost in our waiting. I therefore encourage you to be fathers and mothers of prayer, modelling this to our families and those within our communities, because this will be huge. And I've certainly heard many testimonies of fathers and mothers praying for their children and seeing God answer those prayers. So we've had persistency in the father, and we see a praying father displayed. And now let's focus on this third one, positive fathers. Perhaps one of the striking things about the father's heart in this parable and his attitude is that of complete selflessness. He had lost his money. His son had turned his back on him. He would have felt embarrassed, and his family had experienced shame, perhaps. His neighbours witnessed his son's public rebellion. But now we might have expected the father to be angry, want his money back, or look for some other act of retaliation from a wounded heart. But instead, the father in this story speaks affirmation. He speaks positive words of acceptance and forgiveness when the son returns. His grace and his mercy abound, and the son knows that he can come home and start again. This is staggering. Not only for us all as God's children, but a wonderful glimpse of the power of a parent's positive and affirming words of actions to their children. So today, I encourage you to speak life and affirmation to your children. When we act in this way, we can see the result in positive and empowering ways, both for us and ultimately for our children. Also, the great thing about being in a community of a church is that we have opportunities to be spiritual parents to those younger in amongst us. So I wonder, do you actively choose to speak affirming life to others, especially our children? So as we reflect on this powerful parable, which outlines how God the Father seeks to find his lost children on this Father's Day, may we consider, like you and me, are lost children to God, and then he calls us home. And I wonder what steps today we can take to maybe learn some lessons and move to positively impacting our children ourselves. For each of us, we will need to examine how we can take the lessons of this parable and make it work in our lives. And it might be that we ask ourselves a few questions, and I'm just going to leave you with these to consider. What difference does reading this parable and seeing the actions of the Father make at your home today? What difference would it make to our wider community and within the church as a whole if we take this on? And what practical elements can I and can you take into my life and practice with our children? So be encouraged. As the parable teaches us about the character of God, it also serves as an inspiration to ourselves to also live and act out our lives in a way that honours God, blesses our children, and brings positive transformation to our children, our church, and our wider community. May we all be persevering, prayerful, and positive fathers and mothers. God bless you on this Father's Day.